Well, everyone, Vern Stewart from Go Geezer here, and today I'm going to talk about something that's a little different. If you've ever put in laminate flooring in your house, some of the less professional installations, well, what they'll do is they'll cut off the bottom of your door frame in order to fit the laminate under the door frame. What I'm going to show you today is how to fix the gap that sometimes appears between the bottom of the door frame and the laminate. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. But if you can take just a moment to subscribe to my channel, I really would appreciate it, so I can continue producing more of these videos. Perhaps a little bit of history is in order. Back when I was in Namibia, I was renting out my house, and during that time, I had a property manager who was attending to the house, and there was some flooding that happened. The laminate that I had on the floor back then was prone to buckling once it got wet underneath. It wasn't very good. It was the previous owner had put down the laminating, so it really wasn't that good. But the property owner put in some better laminate, which is a good thing, but the installation wasn't exactly professional. So what happened was I got a lot of gaps between my door frames and where the laminate was installed. I think they're unsightly, and I wanted to find a way to fill in that gap. And I looked on the internet, of course, just like everybody else does, just like you're doing now. And I found several methods, but what I've come up with is a combination of all the different methods that I've seen. So hopefully this will be helpful to you if you've got the same problem I do. Before we get into it, I'd like to mention that the technique I'm going to show you is good for gaps that are up to about a half an inch. Anything larger than that, you might want to scan the internet for a technique that'll fill in something larger than a half an inch. But this is going to be good up to about a half an inch. So again, let's get right into it. All right, let's talk about a list of the things that you're going to need from this technique I'm going to show you. First up is a tube of latex caulk, and what I'm using is the DAP Alex Fast Dry latex caulk plus silicone, and it's supposed to be paintable in 20 minutes. The fact that it's paintable in 20 minutes really doesn't matter, but what you want is a latex caulk that's water soluble, because you're going to be using a wet finger in order to smooth things out. Okay, so that's the first thing. Before we go any further, let me give you a brief tip about caulking. The secret to caulking is how big of an opening you make when you cut the end of the caulk tube. Smaller holes allow you to better control how much caulk you apply. For most applications, I would cut the tip about 1/4, but definitely no more than 1/2 an inch from the end. This should provide an opening that's about 1/4 of an inch. The second thing you're going to need is a roll of painter's tape. I'm using the Scotch Blue. That's just under an inch wide, the 24 millimeter width. That's going to be perfect. Next, you're going to need a package of wood shims. Now, you can get these at Home Depot or Lowe's or any hardware store. So a package of wood shims is the next item on your list. Next, you're going to need a roll of paper towels. And any old paper towel will do. Some of the cheap ones is fine. But you're going to need at least one roll, possibly two, because you're going to be wiping your fingers off in order to smooth out the caulk. So a roll or two of paper towels. And the last thing you're going to need is a wad of paper towels that's been soaked. And we want this thing dripping wet. You want it so wet that when you press it, it just drips water. Okay, and you can see here I have it in a little plastic container, and when I press on it, water kind of oozes out of it. You're going to use this to keep your finger wet while you're using this technique I'm going to show you. So, last item is a wad of very wet paper towels. Okay, this is the door frame I'm going to attack. As you can see, there's a nice size gap right there. Okay, this is where the shims come in handy. If you notice, there's not just a gap between the door frame and the floor, but there's space under the door frame. And that needs to be backfilled, because what will happen is that the latex caulk will try to fill that area, and you don't want that to happen. So what you want to do is you want to cut up the shim using diagonal pliers or whatever else you might have handy in order to do that, and fill in that space under the door frame. Now, you want to make sure that the wood that you're using to fill in that space does not protrude from under the door frame. You want it recessed under the door frame about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. As you can see here, I have the wood under the door frame recessed about, I'd say it's about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so now you need to start taping, and what you want to do is get that tape as close to the door frame as possible without actually going under the door frame. So I would estimate about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away from the door frame. Make sure you take your time to tape properly because the taping will actually make the job look really, really good. So take your time and tape it properly. Now, make sure you have your wetted paper towel handy and also some dry paper towels handy. And what's going to happen now is you're going to start caulking. Okay, now we're going to apply the caulk. And as you can see, the small opening at the end of the caulk tube allows me to control how much caulk we put on. What you don't want to do is push the caulk in. You just want to apply it lightly on the surface. Now that I have the caulk applied, I'm going to go ahead and wet my finger and start using my finger to gently blend the caulk in from the floor up to the door frame. You can see I'm wiping in an upward motion. Every so often I may move horizontally, but primarily I'm moving upward. I don't want to press into the caulk. I want to just blend that caulk from the floor up to the door frame. Wipe off any excess caulk that you may have on your finger on your dry paper towel, and then re-wet your finger anytime you're going to touch the caulk on the door frame. So it's going to be, you're going to blend, wipe off excess, dampen your finger again, and blend some more. If you make a mistake and push into the caulk a little bit, you can go ahead and backfill it and just continue to blend. Once you're satisfied with the blending, you can go ahead and remove the tape. One of the key things about removing the tape is that you don't want the caulk to be dry. You want to remove the tape as quickly as possible, pulling the tape away from the door frame when you do it. Once you have the tape removed, you can go ahead and wet your finger and touch up your blending job if you feel it needs it. And then once that's done, you're done. Here you can see what the door frame looked like before, and now you can see what it looks like after we've done the blending with the caulk. Not bad, huh? And there you have it. I believe this method will work well for you. Two things I need to emphasize is that when you're doing the blending, make sure that you keep your finger wet and also remove the excess caulk from your finger as often as possible. I think you'll find that that really helps with the blending, okay? So, I hope this method works well for you. Please subscribe to my channel and go Geezer, get out there and do it. Take care.